Hey everyone, it's Apex, and today we're going to be doing another 2v2 arena tier list for Wrath of the Lich King, except we're going to assume that there is no PvE gear involved, just arena gear, honor gear, BOEs, and then just a couple badge pieces. But if you don't want to do any heroics and you're going to do no PvE, then assume no badge gear, and this list doesn't change that much. So let's see how much it changes things. Okay, so we're going to be covering most of the viable plus specs in Wrath of the Lich King for 2s. Now, if you don't see your comp here, it doesn't mean that's not viable. Just ask me a question in the comment section, and I will also try to include some honorable mentions as well. Starting first with the Disc Priest Hunter. This needs a lot of damage from the Hunter during CC chains to execute the kills. The Hunter is very gear dependent, and without that gear, it'll be much harder to get your kills in your scatter fear traps. However, you do have a lot of CC. Mana Burn's very powerful. This comp's still great, and I'll be putting it on the lower end probably of great. And I believe I had it in the best tier in my other 2v2 list. We have Disc Rogue. Rogues are extremely gear dependent. Most of the rogues with priests will be playing sub, but they can play assassination. Sub is very gear dependent though, so this one's going to hurt a lot against especially heavy plate wearers. So I'll be putting this one probably in good, as it's also not the strongest comp. However, at the beginning of the game it is much stronger than it is at the end of Wrath. I have Disc Priest DK. Now this one I think is still quite strong. I'll be putting this one on the higher end of great, as the DK needs some PvE gear, but he's nowhere near as hurt from others, and then Disc doesn't really need any PvE gear anyway. We have Holy Paladin DK. Same story as the Disc Priest DK. Holy Paladin doesn't need much PvE gear. The DK wants it, but it doesn't hurt him that much, so I'll be putting this one a little higher than the Disc variant. Both very good, although I do think the Disc variant actually will be better later in the game versus the Holy Paladin will be a little better early. But we don't know, as this Wrath re-release will be totally different, as DKs were nerfed every single patch in the original. I'm moving to Ret DK or Preg DK. This comp's quite powerful and can run over a lot of things. However, the Pally is quite gear dependent, especially the Preg version, but you can still do very well. I will probably put this on the high good or the lower end of great, as they will be lacking a lot of the damage needed because they are using no mortal strike, and when their damage is lowered, it'll make it much harder to get that critical mass to finish people. But I still think it's quite strong, as DKs in general are very strong with the Pally support. I have Disc Ellie. Ellie's not too gear dependent, and neither is Disc, but Ellie in 2s is just not the greatest. I play a lot of Ellie myself, and I've tried everything to try and get high rated in 2s, but it's just very difficult. Ellie does not shine in 2s whatsoever. They're also not the best duelers, but in 3s and 5s, battlegrounds, they're amazing. So don't think Ellie's bad because of this. It's just 2s is not their bracket, but I'll be putting it in viable. It doesn't really change. And also the other good Ellie variations I will mention as honorable mentions is Ellie Destro Lock, as well as Ellie Shadow Priest. I think Ellie Destro Lock is sort of the best variant, especially with no PvE gear. But this can work too, but this one needs more PvE gear, as playing with a healer, it's going to be harder. And then we got Enhanced DK. This one's quite strong without PvE gear. I think this one's actually a little better than the Ret DK variant, and can function a little better as purging, lets you get through a lot of the issues of not having damage to break through shields. Now I have Feral Disc. This comp's very good in general. However, losing the armor pin on the Feral's side, he's going to have a lot more trouble killing during CC chains, especially on the plate wearers. So you go up against Holy Paladin Warrior, Holy Paladin DK, Ret DK, maybe even Shaman DK. It's hard to damage when you don't have those 13,000 bites. You know, they're going to be much, much lower. The comp's still great though, so I'll be probably putting it on the lower end of great, as any DPS paired with a healer that's gear dependent is going to suffer a lot in this list. Now we have Destro Druid, Resto Druid that is. This comp's very good without gear, and neither one is really affected at all. And this comp, especially at the beginning of Wrath, is very strong. It's a little weaker at the end, but the beginning it's very good. I'll probably be putting it at the top of great, or maybe even low best. I'm not exactly sure. I think I would probably put it actually at the lower end of best, and it's shocking for me to put that there, but I do think it's very strong early, and without PvE gear this can do quite well, as Destro Locks are insane with their burst, and the CC chains you can get with Seduce, Shadow Fury, Fear, Death Coil, Cyclone is pretty scary. We have Resto Shaman Warlock. Same story as the Druid Warlock. This one, the lock can play either spec. This variation, the lock pretty much has to be Destro. They can do Affliction still, but this one you can play either spec, and the damage with Lust is insane, and neither spec is really hurt by not having PvE gear. And I'll be playing this one a little ahead of it, as this spec, this is the best comp for a Resto Shaman or a Warlock in 2s. And now we have Disc Mage. This one is not really hurt almost at all by not having the PvE gear. The Mage is hurt just a tiny bit, but this one's very good. I'll be playing this one pretty much at the top of great. It can out CC a Holy Pally DK, a Disc DK with some good play around grips, and then take out one of them, probably the DK. So that's great, as DKs are one of the more resilient ones. And then we have Ret Disc, or Preg, but probably be Ret. Rets are pretty decently gear dependent. This is going to hurt the comp a bit, but it's still good. I'll probably be putting it on the lower end of great. Probably put it just right behind the Feral Disc. And then we have Enhanced Preg. Same story. They're both somewhat gear dependent, but not a ton. But they will be hurt a bit. However, this comp has such strong synergy, even without Mortal Strike, that it's very powerful even early in the game. They would really, really like to have, though, the PvE weapon, especially the Pally if they're playing Preg. But you can still do well. I think I will be putting on the lower end of best, though, or high great. I'm not positive, as I'm just learning about it now in Season 8 on a private server, but it'll be a little different at the beginning of Wrath. Now we have Ret Hunter. These are both very gear dependent and a very, very scary comp. They're going to be hurt quite a bit by not having all the PvE gear, but the added resilience they'll get will help a little bit, as they'll be able to do more CC chains without the PvE gear. So still a very good comp. I think I'll probably put it at the high end of great, but it could still go at the lower end of best. I'm not positive. I think it would probably go... It would probably be losing, though, to these DKs, I think. They could maybe kill the Priest variant, though. But the Mage can kite a lot. So I think I'd probably put it about there. And yeah, the Enhanced Preg version would beat this one. Now we have Ret Rogue or Preg Rogue. Both very gear dependent. A decent comp, though. I'll probably be putting it on the high end of good. It could maybe go low great, but definitely strong. We have Boomkin Rogue. This comp's not the best in the first place, but it's not terrible. So I will be putting it on the higher end of viable, but it could even go in low good. I think rogues pair a little bit better with priests in general. I have Feral Rogue. This one I'll be putting probably at the bottom. Both are pretty gear dependent. If you guys don't have armor pin, it's going to be really hard to kill anyone with plate, and Wrath is basically Wrath of the Plate King, so you're going to be dealing with plate all the time. I have Rogue Lock, and this lock has to be Destro for this to work. Without the Rogue's ARP gear, it'll hurt a bit. It's not the best comp in the first place, so I'll be putting it probably on lower viable, but it might be better than the Ellie disc. I'm not sure. I think the Ellie would... I think these hybrid comps are still a little bit better, though. Mage Rogue, nowhere near as powerful as BC. If you have not played Wrath, but you're playing this comp in BC, or you're playing against it, this comp is significantly worse. It is nothing like it is in BC. Their CC DRs a lot with each other, unlike in BC, where it's absolutely broken. So this comp I'll be putting quite low. I mean, I'd probably even put it below the Feral, I think. I'm not sure. Probably not. These two are really close, though. And then we have Rogue Druid, a very good comp in BC, but once again, in Wrath, not the greatest. I think this comp's quite bad, actually, and I'd be putting it at the bottom of viable. Then we have Shadow Priest Mage. This comp is extremely powerful. Shadow with Mage and all of Wrath has some of the best synergy, if not the best synergy in the game. And Shadow Priest to really shore up the weaknesses of Mage. Mage can reset MS with the ice blocks, and then the CC chains with Fear Polys, and then you can cover everything with a Silence. So the Mage or Priest can go Silence, and then get a full Poly, or easily get a Fear out of a Root Silence or Deep Freeze. It's just gross synergy, and I'll be putting this as the best without any PvE gear. Now we have Shadow Priest Rogue. Now this one is not affected a ton by the missing PvE gear, especially the Shadow Priest. However, the Rogue is. But I believe their combined synergy, as well as the fact that the Rogue can dismantle a DK to prevent death strikes, do it on a warrior to prevent shield wall, will allow them to finish off the heavy plate wearers, as the Shadow Priest damage is kind of insane. And then you also have wound poison, and then maybe they're cleansing it, but you still have the 20% MS that comes off the Shadow Priest Mind Blast. And I think this comp is still very good, and I would just put it a little lower than it was in my geared list, but I think it's pretty strong. I mean, it might even be stronger than these two. No, I think I'd probably keep right there. And then we have Holy Valley Warrior. This comp I ranked as number 1 in my other list. Oops, spoilers. But this comp, the Warrior especially, will be hurt massively by not having the PvE gear. So, like I said earlier, any healer variation where the main DPS is very PvE gear reliant is going to be hurt massively. So I'll be putting this one much lower. It's still a very good comp. You can still do very well, but I'll be putting it a little lower. I won't be putting it the best, but I'll probably be putting it somewhere still in great. I think I'd probably be putting it maybe like around here, as I believe a Priest DK could take it out, a Ret Hunter could take it out. Now, a lot of these comps that struggle with it could do much better against it with the Warrior missing so much gear. This might be too low. It might deserve to be higher, but with no PvE gear, the Warriors hit the hardest pretty much in the entire game, or at least maybe top 3 specs hit the hardest would be an Arms Warrior. I have Arms Warrior Druid. This comp's not the best anyway. It can do okay, but the Warrior missing Dispel is huge. So I'm going to be putting this one very low. Probably, definitely ahead of the Rogue Druid variant though. And I'll probably put ahead of the Rogue Feral. So yeah, I'd put that one much lower. This might surprise you if you're a BC player, and I actually played this comp a ton in BC. It is nothing like it is in BC, especially if the Warrior doesn't have the PvE gear. I have Warrior Ret. This one's not bad. It isn't the greatest though, as DK synergy is much better with the Paladin, and then the Warriors typically want to be playing with the healer. So I'll be putting this one on the lower end. I think I'll be putting it probably somewhere down here. They're both hurt by not having the PvE gear. I think I'd probably put it ahead of the Warrior Druid, as they can still cleave stuff down and have all the utility, but it's hurt massively. And then we have Warrior Resto Shaman. I think this is one of the worst variations for Warrior. I'd be putting this one very low. It's still viable, you can still do okay with it, but it's not like BC. You don't Mace Stun, you don't have the crazy Wind Fairy procs. Wind Fairy is just a haste buff now. Huge nerf for Warriors. So I'll be putting this one pretty low. Maybe it should be about here, or maybe ahead of the Feral. I think I'd probably put it about here though. It's nothing like BC. These two are like a BC, and you might be wondering, where's Warrior Disc? Well, Warrior Disc is actually quite strong. I would say that's the second strongest of the Warrior variations, and I'd be putting Warrior Disc a little bit behind the Warrior Paladin. I'd probably be putting it probably right about here, so the lower end of great, as the Paladin version is much stronger, but the Priest Warrior version is still very good and can do better against some comps that the Warrior HPAL cannot. Thanks for watching, guys. If this video is helpful to you, please like that video and subscribe, and I'll be making many more Wrath of the Lich King videos for all of you.
First Blood!